the subconscious mind is what governs up to 97% of our daily action.
I'm going to the supermarket and I really want that particular cheese. I love cheese, so this is just an example for me that really works.
The grandma specifically asked you since 2 weeks that cheese is needed for the menu of the Christmas Eve. If the cheese is not there, then this Christmas Eve dinner is gonna be completely ruined. Well, yes, but why so? It's a little bit more complex. All right, welcome back to the Wholegrain Wisdom living room couch, where I invited my wife, she asks questions, I answer, and we try to finally give, the explanations that you always wanted, that you always dreamed for, but there's never been the right place at the right time to listen them fully. This is the place where we are converging ancient wisdom and science for true healing, and where we are finally reconnecting the points within these two, let's call them traditions, these two wisdoms that for some reason they've been kept separated, but they're the same fundamental truth, just expressed in different languages. Right now, today, we're giving a second take on trauma, because the very first video started to touch a little bit of what is it, why do we get it wrong from society, why do we think that is way worse than the actual work that we need to do for ourselves. But there have been so many other little things in the daily life that we haven't touched. So let's get right into it. What's your first thing that comes to mind when we really want to go into the daily life of understanding trauma, or as we called it last time, the impressions, negative impressions?
Yeah, well, the thing is, in our daily life as adults, we go around, we do things, we try to schedule and juggle multiple things with kids, pets, and friends, and
work.
Work also. And at some point, I don't know, I feel like there are small things that happens to us, and then we don't realize, okay, why is this really what I'm feeling? Why this is something like super basic that should mean nothing to me, and still it kind of stays in my mind for the whole day, for example. So I don't know, something like very basic could be, I'm going to the supermarket and I really want that particular cheese. I love cheese, so this is just an example for me that really works, but it could be anything, no? And you go there and you look at the counter, and that particular one that you really like and you're really looking forward for yourself but also your family is not there. And in a way you get angry, or you get sad. I don't know, you could feel any kind of emotion. Would you say that this is kind of connected with a traumatic impression?
Well, yes, of course. But why so? It's a little bit more complex. And I think getting there from the traditional, logical, rational perspective is a little bit difficult. Why? Because again, we need to go back to the subconscious mind. As we already told many times, the subconscious mind is what governs up to 97% of our daily action. So everything that happens, literally almost everything, is being triggered or being operated under the shadow by the subconscious mind. So if something triggers us, and it really seems from a rational point of view very stupid, like very meaningless, but it does create an emotion, then it's not meaningless. First of all, let's be very acknowledging about this topic. What it could be happening is that there is a belief inside of the subconscious mind that has been developed who knows when in the past, that is connecting the same similar situation, the same type of event, but with a much worse outcome. I don't know, imagine, when you made this example, my mind immediately went into past times, kind of like Christmas Eve situation where super busy, my parents were getting back from work, and they were rushing into preparing the Christmas Eve dinner. 24th of December in Italy was still kind of like a working day. So I always remember I'm coming back from home early today. I don't know, 4 p.m. instead of 8. And I have to prepare this massive dinner, and everybody's rushing to the supermarket, and the cheese is gone. and you go back home and the cheese is not there. And for some reason, the grandma specifically asked you since 2 weeks that cheese is needed for the menu of the Christmas Eve. And if the cheese is not there, then this Christmas Eve dinner is going to be completely ruined. And so you feel ashamed, you feel stressed, you feel angry because also, how is it possible that on the Christmas Eve dinner at night, the supermarket is empty? They should have thought about this. So something like that could have happened in your life that saved this memory into your database of the subconscious mind. And every time that you find yourself again in a similar situation, so the clue, when we talk about the habits, you always have the 3 steps, right? The clue, the actual habit, like the actions that you run, and then the outcome, which is in some cases the reward, positive or negative. So the clue is always the same, is very similar. The habit may look different, but still a little bit of the same, but the outcome this time is like completely different. So until you don't spend a little bit of time to work on noticing, first of all, I think the very first action that anybody can do without you knowing about meditation, without you knowing anything about the subconscious reprogramming, nothing of that, just notice it. Notice if there is an action that you keep doing and without a specific rational reason, it triggers you an emotion. This is already the first work, because when you notice it, you do what in psychology you'd call the shadow work. Let me get a little bit into like the more technical, if I would say, of how all of these emotions and triggers and beliefs work. So a negative emotion, a negative belief system, in order to exist, it does show up in a very subtle and apparently positive way. What do I mean? I mean that if the body and the mind in nature is always looking for survival mechanisms, right? And is always looking for the safest and the most convenient path. That's why we end up sometimes eating junk food or doing things that are not really healthy for us because they're easy. And our body instantaneously go into the direction of easiness. So when you have saved such an emotion, such a situation in your database, and it gets re-triggered, it's like a safe mechanism to protect you from something. Now, when you notice it, you do light work. So the opposite, of course, is shadow work, in the sense that you shine like a lamp, a light into this negative belief system. When you shine the light, the negative belief almost automatically disappear. If it's not something very ingrained deeply in you, already noticing is already something very powerful. Because if it wasn't for that light, it would be kept in the shadow for longer, and it would have been kept, coordinating your subconscious mind without your conscious agreement. Let's say you're kind of like willing and awareness.
But sorry, let me pause you there.
Yeah.
Like, when you say noticing, what does it mean? Is it the person saying, I'm feeling this? Like, what is the noticing actually? How does that happen?
So noticing means that you do a conscious action of a very specific situation, and you are very out loud about how are you feeling? How is this making you feel? Because if you don't do that, you cannot connect kind of like the dots. Imagine like a link between the negative emotion and the belief. So it doesn't need to be that you go to a therapist and you speak about it. It doesn't need to be you speak about it with somebody if you don't feel comfortable. It can just simply mean you write it down, you journal about it, you talk out loud alone by yourself about this. Just do anything that would kind of like ground, materialize this thought into something more concrete. Okay? This is the first action. Then when you notice that this is not going out, it keeps repeating, then first of all, it most probably means that there are multiple emotions and multiple beliefs that are clustered within one giant piece that are all together, and they need to be worked in different layers like an onion. You need to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And in order to go deeper, the real work is working at the subconscious level. This is the work that we do at Wholegrain Wisdom. We teach and train people to learn how they can interact directly with their subconscious mind and do several actions that are connected to the acupuncture points and the central meridians, so that you can release these knots of energy. Because at the kind of biological perspective, all of these beliefs, all of these emotions are saved as memory, we already said. But if you really want to understand what does it even mean to have a memory saved in your subconscious mind, you need to think about your body as the database, as the hardware that is storing, the information. And in all of your body, there is kind of like a field of electromagnetic energy that contains all of this information. Imagine that you're like a hardware box with like a storage box that is emitting the signal of Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, whatever you want to imagine, and is broadcasting this kind of information to the people around. So when you want to go deeper and do the clearing from this layer, from this level, you need to access it first of all. And when you go so deep that you can access it, then there are several works connected to the ancient wisdom, connected to traditional Chinese medicine. There are many traditions across the world that have been mapping exactly the same protocols and exactly the same methods. And when you release it, that knot of energy, electromagnetic energy, it literally does like this, poof, and it evaporates. When it evaporates, it no longer triggers you, because you will notice for yourself, and this is actually a really crazy experience, because you have a conscious memory that you get triggered in that situation, but your body doesn't get triggered anymore. Like the emotional perspective is not there anymore. So when you do this work and you find yourself the next time at the supermarket looking for cheese and the cheese is not there, you just say, oh, okay, I will buy something else. And then you go back home and it's like, wait a second, what happened? I was supposed to get triggered, but now I'm not. That's a sign that you've done the work.
And that's also amazing, because when you go back and your family is asking for that cheese, you're also like, I don't know, I bought another one. That's also fine.
And also that doesn't trigger you, because...
That doesn't trigger you, because sometimes it's the people around you that also kind of adds, to that emotion. Yeah, this is very interesting. And of course, if they want to, kind of clear a little bit of that energy, they can call you.
So thanks again for listening. This is the Wholegrain Wisdom Living Room Couch Conversations. We are answering some of your most recurring questions that we get asked in our work with our community. If you have some, write them in the comments, subscribe to the newsletter, just join this community. We are really doing the hard work ourselves, so that for you is just a path straight forward into converging the dots between the ancient wisdom and science for true healing and, of course, a much better life. See you to the next time.
Thank you for listening. Until next time.